Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions. I want to thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Let's just take a look at the last weekend's system. We saw quite a bit of severe weather that stretched on Friday back in the panhandle of Texas, and then throughout the day on Saturday spread through across much of the mid and lower Mississippi River Valley. By the time this all got over to the Carolinas, we're dealing with some of the remnant showers of this, although before all this got going, remember, we even saw some snow that came into parts of some of the higher elevations in North Carolina. But the thing I want to draw your attention to is what's going on with our precipitation picture, and it's been extremely wet in this area, and we just put down here quite a bit more precipitation over the last few days. Just to show you how wet things have been, let's take a look at the map in the upper left-hand corner first. This is the last 30 days looking at departures from normal, and you can clearly see a wide section here in parts of the Tennessee Valley getting over to the Appalachian Mountains and then to the Carolinas that have been quite wet. Now, where's it been dry? Look at this. Just along the coast, getting down into South Carolina and stretching through the peanut and cotton belt, getting over here to Texas, things have been relatively dry. We're about to change that, though, for those areas. Now, meanwhile, what has all that wet weather done? Well, you can see here all of the river gauges across this same region that are currently at or near flood stage. That's 202 separate gauges. When we talk about how much additional soil moisture we have, we'll look at the map in the bottom right where you see the numbers getting at or above 100. That's a 4-inch surplus. But notice down here how things are a little bit drier. So when you think down here about South Carolina, things are much drier than they are in North Carolina. This has been kind of the hyper-locality of this past several weeks worth of weather. It's been nailing some folks and other folks have been missed. Now, as we get into this week, our severe weather threat it keeps translating west with time. So initially, the first big system was here in parts of Georgia and Alabama. The second was down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley. Now we're going back over to Texas. It's going to be late Tuesday afternoon into the overnight hours. And the system that's producing this is going to be quite vigorous. Here's where it is. This is the trough at this point. Now, for North Carolina, it's going to be very important to see what this trough is going to do because right now it's got this strong positive tilt to it. It is going to sweep through parts of Mexico, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, such that by the time it emerges here in the Central Plains, it's going to end up having a negative tilt. That means the system's going to lift, which is going to give us quite a warm week here in North Carolina. And after some early week potential for some thunderstorms, it's going to be a relatively dry week as well. That's all due to the position of that upper level feature. So let's watch it here, okay? Starting you off at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, you're going to see some of the storms kind of moving basically from Oklahoma, Texas, straight on across over here, really hitting South Carolina and Georgia. That's going to be basically round one, but then watch what emerges. Let's pause this here. Here goes those lighter scattered showers and storms. So they kind of hit south of North Carolina. So that's really not too much to worry about here. But watch this system emerge. Here it is. This is a monstrous low-pressure system. And it goes racing right there through Texas, Oklahoma. Big damaging squall line is what it looks like it's going to be producing at this time. And on the backside, well, just be thankful you're not in parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, North or South Dakota, because they're about to get slammed with a huge snowfall event, and they've already got a lot of snow on the ground. But as get you through Wednesday morning, much of North Carolina kind of misses out on this system and really doesn't get too much. In fact, here's the total accumulated precip through 8 a.m. on Wednesday. So warm, dry start to the week for us here in most of the Carolinas. Maybe in southern South Carolina it gets a little bit of rain. Now, as we progress forward, let's kind of see where that bigger system is going. So there it is, kind of wrapping itself all out. Let's step you back and kind of look at the timing. So this may be potentially a record setter here for the Central Plains. Incredibly strong winds, but we're dominated here in the Carolinas by this big high pressure system sitting off the coast. That's just going to feed warmer air across the Carolinas as we go throughout much of this week. And because this system lifts so quickly into Canada, it loses the integrity of that front as it tries to press toward the Carolinas. But still, we're going to watch out for basically next Friday morning, getting throughout the day on Friday to get some widely scattered showers and thunderstorms, which means much of the week is dry. It's going to be a Friday event by the time the system gets here. Now, after that passes, I just want you to look at the overall pattern. Here we're at the 17th of March, 18th, 19th, 20th. I mean, to be honest with you, things are really dry as we progress beyond this system that's going to kind of cause a lot of problems in the middle section of the country here in the next few days. And we got to talk about that. To look at the total accumulated precipitation through the next 5 days, again, it's going to be dry up until that front gets there on Friday. And really for much of the Carolinas, things don't look to be too wet. Where is it going to be wet? Get on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. We're putting down more rainfall in a region that's already saturated right here in the Tennessee Valley, lower Mississippi River Valley, and also Texas all the way to North Dakota is going to be wet out of this next system as well. Okay, what's the change that's happening that's drying us out, hopefully? Well, check this out. As we press forward, we're going to see throughout the middle and into this week this deep trough swinging through right here in the middle part of the country. But look over here on the East Coast. See the ridge building? A lot of warmth coming in with this one. Very, very warm conditions. It is definitely going to feel like spring. But I want you to see that with time, that trough migrates east. So after having a warm week, by the time we get into the weekend and early next week, things are going to be a little bit cooler than average for a while. And that's because we go into what's called the positive P&A pattern, where there's a ridge out west and a broader trough over the northeast. That particular pattern, that's called the Pacific North American pattern, seems to hang around as we get into the third week of March. In fact, we're going to be seeing possibly some relatively cooler weather compared to average. So the warm week that's coming up is relatively short-lived as this trough settles in. Now, let me get you to the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. We do see the European ensemble getting rid of that. And at this point, I certainly see some seasonable temperatures returning by the end of the month and getting us started off into April. So spring isn't gone. It's still there. Now, watch these temperatures. Are you ready for this? Temperature anomalies every 6 hours through the next 15 days. Now, by the time we get into midweek, look at the warm air out of that system. Wow, really, really warm air. But after it passes through, the colder air makes it all the way down to the Gulf Coast and East Coast. Now, when you look at these colors, I know they look really cold, but they're not that bad. We're just 3, 4, 5 degrees cooler than average is what the model's picking up on here as we get into the 18th, 19th, and 20th. But that cooler weather hangs on as we kind of progress through spring break for a lot of folks. But then notice as I get past the 22nd, 23rd, we start to see some moderation in temperature again. So this is this cold spell that's coming up. It's got about a week worth, and it's going to be following a quite warm week this week. And maybe that's kind of the last hurrah for some bitterly cold air kind of moving out of the northern plains, trying to get its way to the southeast coast. Okay, what about precipitation anomalies? Well, if we look over here on the left, this is the European model looking at all of the next 15 days put together, and they certainly pick up on the drier pattern overall for much of the eastern United States. The wet that you see here is primarily from the system going through right now. It's also pretty dry here in the Pacific Northwest. Looking specifically at week 2, and I'm going to show you the US model, the GFS for this one. Deep coastal low sitting way out here in the Gulf of Alaska keeps things very wet there, but again, dry bias in the northwest and a dry bias here for much of the east and southeast. Where's it going to be wet? Down in the Gulf Stream as well over here. So that's at least moving us toward a drier time period moving forward. Although again, like I said, it's going to be a cooler time period as well. But that flow pattern in the atmosphere is just not conducive to developing large low pressure systems when it splits, like I told you, like this, into a trough here. That split flow keeps convergence in this area, and that's just not good for big storms. Now, as we look longer term, I want to bring your attention to something we got to pay attention to, and that is the cooler water that's right now emerging off the west coast of the United States and British Columbia. If we start to see that cooler water area expand to cover this area that I'm kind of shading in through here, that's one thing that I have to be careful for watching for the potential for some drought conditions across the southeast later this summer. Now, I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you to know, let's watch it together over the coming months. It's much more important to see what this looks like in June than it is in early March. Meanwhile, though, we certainly do have our El Nino event going here. It's a weak one, and it's not really impacting the United States too much. It's really impacting more of what's going on in South America. So let's talk about corn and beans, both the safrinha crop and the first crop, and also some cotton. Now, in Brazil, they've had a drier time period through the last 90 days, but recent rainfall at the end of February and beginning of March has kind of brought things back up as a safrinha crop. That's the second crop has gone in with corn and cotton. Meanwhile, though, the next 15 days does look to carry a little bit of a dry bias here in Mato Grosso, the biggest producing state for corn, cotton, and soybeans. Now, that safrinha crop went in. It's about 2 weeks ahead of time right now. So this is important because those April and May rains are crucial to safrinha crop. Meanwhile, in Argentina, corn and beans look pretty good. The early planted corn's 55% good to excellent rating. You can see over here in the precipitation graph, they've carried a wet bias for quite some time. Overall, a pretty good year. They did have a frost sneak pretty far to the north out of the south, but it looks as though it didn't do much damage at this point. And the next 10 days, they'll look to carry a cool bias, which is a crucial time of year for Argentina in their growing season. Meanwhile, I also want to just show you quickly what's going on in over here in parts of Australia. This is Australia's most productive region for crops, and they are finally breaking out of the hot, dry spell. They got some precip moving into that area. Not a lot, but some widely scattered showers and thunderstorms. To finish this up, I want to give you the long-range update that just came out from the European model and what April looks like. Like I told you, that pattern's tending to break down. Looks as though right now from the European model, and I really don't have anything to go against this, that we're going to be seeing some warmer conditions throughout the month of April across the southeast and across the Carolinas. My big concern would be if we continue to see a strong subtropical jet. If we do that, that's going to basically light up this area as we get into the month of April with the potential for a lot of rainfall at times and some severe weather. At least the good news is once we get past this system coming through this week, things do tend to dry down for next week and maybe a little bit beyond that. With that, though, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We at Nutrient Ag Solutions and the Farm Credit System here in North Carolina want to thank you for your attention. Hope you look forward to our next update coming out next week. Thank you.